So again, welcome. For those of you who have been here before, I'm so glad to see you again. And for those of you who are new, just want to let you know, Unlock Higher Education. Unlock Higher Education is a place, a collaborative, a coalition, a membership, if you will, of individuals that are like-minded, that come from all spaces and places, whether it's organizations, whether it's just advocacy, whether it's education, but for the purpose of increasing access to higher education or education overall, in the path of reentry and in the path of individuals trying to learn inside as well as those coming home. So it's about inside and outside access to education. I say this because we've also incorporated a little bit more of the workforce mentality, because at the end of the day, if we are accessing education and we are upscaling on our skill set, is for the purpose of being able to attain equitable employment. And so we've considered that aspect of it as well. So again, is a membership that's come together, a group of individuals from different spaces, different places. We have nationwide access, and I'm happy to say that, you know, people come with different experiences, levels of experiences, but also that brings rich conversations to this community. And about rich conversations, we have our monthly meetings as you are attending today, and I'm excited to talk about our speakers in a minute, but just so that we are in place with our regular scheduled, I guess, steps, we can give a few minutes for those who have not met each other, because again, this is a space of collaboration, a space of learning, a space of meeting individuals in this community. So we will break into meeting groups, breakout groups. We'll have a few breakout groups so that you guys can get to know a little bit better, each other a little bit better, and for about 5 minutes, and then we can come back into our regular agenda. Yeah. Is everybody back, or are we still waiting?
I think we should switch groups now.
Right? Well, that usually what we do is, like, those who want to talk about what they learned and who they met, you know, they have the floor for a few minutes. So I can get started. I can talk about my group, and we were like in the middle of a conversation where we got pulled out. But yeah, so we had in our group, we had Sheila. We also had, where is she? Hold on a second.
It's Katie right over
Katie,
here.
yes, yeah. Katie. And so Katie taught Hazleton, where Sheila in the past, was it property that you sold to the institution?
I owned property that ended up eventually becoming where they built Hazleton.
Which is where I spent 2.5 years. So imagine this conversation. It was like, oh my goodness, we're all connected. So yeah, so that was good to see. And I was telling them that back in 2011, 2012, which is where it was in Hazleton at that time, which was a rough institution. It was actually a secure female facility. It wasn't even an FCI or anything like that. But anyways, they had classes coming into education. I worked in the education department. Back in the day, they had a few classes coming in from the colleges. So I was
Thank you so much for contacting Apple Support. This is Tiffany speaking.
What?
Oh.
So I was very appreciative that they were kind of like, in a sense, ahead of the game in that part, that, you know, the administration was willing to do that. But yeah, that was a great conversation. I got to meet Katie. Katie, you want to tell us what you're doing right now?
Sure. Strange for Hazleton to be our intersection. So I'm a professor of English at West Virginia University. I've been there for about 25 years. And I also direct the West Virginia University Higher Education in Prison Initiative. We have a associate degree program in a state prison, actually in Pennsylvania. So just over the border from where we're located in Morgantown, West Virginia. I'm also the founder of the Appalachian Prison Book Project. If some of you may have heard of that, we send free books to people incarcerated in 6 states. But the first class I ever taught in prison was at Hazleton. And we had a book club actually at the SFF, at the women's multi-security prison at Hazleton for 5 years. So then COVID, we lost that access over COVID, and we're just now hoping to get back into Hazleton. So we've just renewed conversation. So all of that was great to hear.
Oh, thank you for joining us. Anybody else wants to share a few words before we get started?
I will. So I finally got to meet Beth. I keep seeing her name in everything that I do and everything that I am in, and I'm like, oh Beth, and then I saw her, and it's fun to see people's faces. But I am very happy to be here with everybody else that I know, except for Katie.
Yeah, Beth has been with us for quite some time as well. She is, as you will hear later on, she is our chair for our membership committee. And again, and we have some wonderful people doing some great job, great work in this space, and it's all because their heart is in it. So I appreciate all of you guys that are volunteering into getting this coalition in place and this work being done in this group that we kind of tend to stick together, work through together, and ride those tides together. And with that, I will bring it to today's meeting and our guest speakers. I'm so excited to introduce 2 phenomenal individuals that are doing some great work in this space. And I'm also excited to talk about the topic that they're bringing the topic to the forefront, because one of the things that I was mentioning earlier, but I've learned is that access to education should be equitable and it should be accessible to everybody. And that doesn't happen a lot in the inside in institutions. And so disability is one major issue, as well as, in my opinion, English for speakers of second language. And so that, that access, they're not able to attain. And I am happy to introduce these 2 phenomenal advocates that are working in this space today to bring access, particularly to disability, for those individuals to be able to get some equitable, some education, some quality education out there. And with that, today we have Ben Wright. He is the Director of Disability Access in Prison Education at The Community, a nonprofit dedicated to expanding inclusive education opportunities for incarcerated individuals. He's a former special education teacher and person with lived experience in the criminal punishment system. Well said. Ben brings a dual perspective, both professional and personal, to his advocacy work. He currently leads a nationwide initiative funded by ECMC Foundation to access and improve disability access in prison education programs across more than a dozen states and territories. That's awesome. His work includes conducting site visits, facilitating training for correctional educators, and co-developing a research-informed trauma-aware accessibility manual for post-secondary prison programs. Ben holds a master's in education in special education and a master's in English literature, and is pursuing both an MFA in creative writing and a PhD in English literature. He is busy with a research focus on disability, authorship, and representation. He has published with JSTOR and presented at national conferences of higher education in prison, disability policy, and reentry. Ben, you're phenomenal. We also have another phenomenal in person today, and that's Jenifer Montag, NICCER, has recently, Dr. Jenifer, right? Did I miss that?
Nope.
Has recently become the inaugural Associate Director of the National Center for College Students and Disabilities, the NCCSD. Prior to starting at the NCCSD, she directed, facilitated, and managed college disability services in a large doctoral university, a large community college, and at 2 medium-sized community colleges. Her doctoral research focused on the facilitation of college disability services for disabled students enrolled in college, prisons, education programs. Throughout her professional work, she has also taught both graduate and undergraduate students at the university. Recently, she has been fortunate to teach the community college's first-year experience class inside the 2 medium security prisons, helping students develop college study skills and career goals. This is phenomenal. I'm just like, when I read this stuff and the work that it's being done, it's just come so far from where I first experienced incarceration. So I am just so grateful for all the advocacy that all of you are doing. In her new role as the Associate Director of NCCSD, in addition to providing technical assistance about disabilities in college, Jenifer is focusing on strengthening the connections between disabled college students, the College Disability Services offices, and the State of Veterans Administration Vocational Rehabilitation Services as well. Throughout her career, Jenifer has been focusing on strengthening the connections between disabled students. Throughout her career, Jenifer has been focused on making sure disabled persons are interested in post-secondary education have information to understand that they can attend college and what services and supports might be available for them. This is absolutely applies to college access inside the prisons, as prisons have an often overlooked population on higher the average numbers of disabled persons. It is unfortunately an increasing population, and access is not there. The quality is not there. So I'm just so grateful that you guys are doing this kind of work. Jenifer wants students to know about the student-focused, student-run DREAM disability rights education advocacy and mentoring group as well. And I hope that, Jenifer, today you will introduce a little bit more about that conversation. And so welcome both.
I hope we have time.
Yes, well, welcome both of you, and we'll get started with your, you have the floor.
Okay, well, welcome everyone. Give me just a second to start the slideshow, and hopefully that all works out well, because, you know, there's always a technical issue.
And
like
you guys can reach the agenda as well on the chat.
Okay, now you should all be able to see the PowerPoint. Is that correct?
The note that's showing done.
Now you can see the PowerPoint, right?
Now, yeah.
Okay, we're all good. So thank you for having us. Thank you for inviting us to join you today. Basically, we wanted to give just some tools and tips that the higher education and prison programs, the staff, can help facilitate those accommodations and what the disability services at the college might be looking for in terms of support from the HEP staff and faculty in order to all work together. We do have our contact information on several slides in here. We are open to providing technical assistance and feedback, so please reach out to us if you don't get your question answered today. Very quickly, because when we do these presentations, we always run out of time, and it's because there's just so much information. So we're just going to go over the why, the what, the who, the how, some challenges, some successes, and then hopefully get to some questions from all of you. While we get started, our introductions were done. Thank you very much, Judith, for doing our introductions. So we're just going to get started, and we actually have some questions for you to think about as we're going through the presentation. With your HEPs, what other campus offices are you collaborating with? Where are your educational programs situated? Are they on an upper floor? Is there an elevator? Do you know where the elevator is? And do the students have access to that elevator? In the correctional setting, oftentimes the elevator is very controlled. How many students with disabilities has your program worked with? And what types of disabilities have you experienced? And what accommodations have you provided or have students been asking for in your programs? So just think about those as we go through these conversations. We just want these to be things that might be a hook for you as we're talking about some of the data and some of the more dry stuff. So the why, the legal reasons, and Ben keeps telling me I should just go to law school because I really like the legal part of it and explaining that. And then I'm going to have Ben talk about the student inclusion, especially with his observations coming from a K-12 special education background. There are two laws that apply to colleges. It's the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990 and the Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. Both of those are non-discrimination laws that say colleges and universities cannot discriminate on the basis of disability in all programs, services, and activities. Additionally, with the release of the Pell Grants, there is that Pell requirement that the HEP must provide similar services as on campus. Well, on campus, you're going to have college disability services. So that's one of those services that was not spelled out in the Pell Grant guidelines, but it is a similar service that should be looked at and provided on your prison education campuses. Non-delegable duty. So oftentimes when we're talking to colleges, we're hearing that, well, the prison's responsible for that because it's at the prison. And the non-delegable duty was actually from a case, the Ralph Jensen and Associates case in the 8th Judicial Court, where it stated that you can't really do the finger pointing. You're responsible, you're responsible. Each entity has their own responsibility. The prison is responsible to ensure that the process for allowing anyone who's interested in being a student, that is non-discriminatory in their environment. And they're also responsible for the environment, like in their locks or in their dorms, for the accessibility. The college still has responsibility for its programs, services, and activities. And the HEP is considered a college program. And so that's where looking at what is being done on campus and how can you within HEP, or if you're in disability services, and if you are, shout out, I'm happy that you're joining us today, that you can work with the college disability services and collaborate together to create that accessibility. I do want to point out that the Department of Justice did file a summary judgment against the Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Corrections, ODRC, in 2016, and found that Ohio was discriminating against people with disabilities, and they were dictated as to what they were going to do, when they were going to do it, how they were going to do it, and who was going to do it to create accessibility across the prison settings. And with that, it spelled out contractors. So many of us are entering into the prison setting considered as contractors. And the ODRC settlements actually said that the DOC must ensure that contractors also do not discriminate against people with disabilities. Ben, do you want to address your observations? Because I think that's really critical to understanding the why we do it. The legal is how we can get our administration to assist us in moving the ball forward, but why we do it, it's in our heart.
I'm assuming you're done with the legal part. Okay, so I will move on to the other part. Just so you know, I am deaf myself, and the captions never understand me. And it's always a little bit off. So if you're relying on captions, it's not going to work out for you. If you have trouble understanding me at any point, you could just raise your hand or something like that, and I will try to back up and slow down and whatnot. So the first thing I just wanted to say, thank you for the introduction. You saved us a lot of time with that because I tend to go on and on about that sometimes. I think that we're all very well-meaning people, and the fact that you're even here means a lot. And sometimes I feel that because we have gaps in the system doesn't mean we are being intentionally ignorant of what's going on. A really good example of that is last week I was at the airport and I told them that I was deaf and might need some extra help. And as I was getting off the plane, they came up to me with a wheelchair. And I'm like, what? What's this wheelchair for? So that just highlights how they meant well. They wanted to help, but they didn't understand how they could help. So that is why we're here today. So it depends on which survey, which study you look at in terms of what disabilities are there and how many people in the system have disabilities. So if you look at a study that by my sector. It was done in 2017, published in 2021. It says 38% of people in the prison system have some sort of disability, but that does not account for, you know, the aging population. As you get older, your hearing starts to go, your vision starts to go, and especially in the cultural system, when you're not receiving the best of care, some of the other body parts start to, you know, well, so they can manifest into disabilities, and that is often left out, and it's not reflected in that 38%. There's also a lot of hidden disabilities out there and undiagnosed disabilities, because let's be frank, most of the individuals who go to prison don't have a good upbringing. My son, who I adopted when he was 14, is a perfect example. His mother failed to send him to school for over a year, so he was placed in foster care, and I ended up adopting him. But I started noticing that something was off, and he had ADHD, and all this time he had gone undiagnosed and had no paperwork, nothing like that. So he's not alone, and that number is growing actually. So if they end up in the prison system, that means they have no documentation of that disability. It could also mean, you know, how you get glasses, before you get the glasses on, put the glasses on, you're like, oh, I don't need those, I'm fine, whatever. And then you put them on, you're like, oh, okay, maybe I do need them. Yeah, the doctor said to me, how in the world were you driving before you had glasses? I don't know. But, you know, it's hindsight is 20/20, right? So, and just think about it that way. So really, the 38% number is really low. Another study done Another study that was conducted that 66% of people in the prison system have some sort of disability. That includes mental health and psychiatric disabilities, which the first study did not. And also, it's self-reporting, so it's from individuals themselves. My research brain is, you know, sometimes fired when we're talking about self-reporting and whatnot. We can get into that another time. But the point is, those numbers are high. So what are we doing to provide those students the accommodations they need? Some good examples. Some of you have heard me talk about this before. I was a tutor for the ABE program in the prison, and about half of the class was Spanish speaking, and the teacher did not know any Spanish. So there was already that language barrier between the teacher and the student, and what they needed was to learn how to read. So that's just a gap right there. And technically, just because you know a different language doesn't mean you have a disability, but that's a problem in itself. And then the rest of the class were all students with disabilities of some sort, ranging from blindness to deafness to ADHD, all over the place. And most of them were just sitting there coloring, you know, little, like, yeah, it was awful. And I've actually heard that story across the country. Like we mentioned, we're working on a grant right now with that's identifying 2 to 4 states in the east region of the ADA network. And what we're doing is trying to figure out what each program is doing in terms of accommodation, accessibility, and all that stuff. And then we're making a training manual from that. Anyway, some of the things I've observed so far, some of the programs are very consistent in terms of what they provide, which is, you know, coloring paper or a teacher that doesn't know Spanish trying to teach the Spanish students. So there's that. John, I'm gonna let you take over.
Thank you. There was a question in the comments chat section, so I just responded to it. Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 requires that if an institution receives $1 of federal funds, so student financial aid is clearly federal funds, any grants or funding from the federal government, even if it's passed through, like any state funding from the state Department of Education that goes to the correctional education programs has to be non-discriminatory. So I just wanted to follow up on that.
Hey, John, I forgot to mention about that. One of the things that I noticed, and I saw this in a documentary that was done on Bard, and the Bard College program. It's called Prison College Beyond Bard. It's on the PBS website if you want to watch it. Anyway, the English teachers in here can relate to this. Sometimes you get a student and you expect them to write an essay or a narrative or whatever it might be, and then you realize they don't know how to write a topic. They don't know how to start a paragraph or write a full paragraph. So we already have students who are very behind in terms of education. That's not necessarily disability, but in terms of education, because they don't know how to write a paper. And if they don't know how to write a paper, they can't move on to the more advanced classes that are required under general education requirements, like psychology, for instance. If they are trying to write, whatever topic they need to write in that psychology class, they have to go back to the English 101. So that's another area that really needs to be given attention. And Elizabeth, I see your question in the chat. The grant, like I said, has two parts. One of them is a training manual that we're focused on all 5 programs. So that's ABE, GED, vocational, higher ed, which is the space that we're all in, and then finally correctional officers and sensitivity training for correctional officers. And as you know, they're in the prison classroom, right? But then they leave, and when they leave, where do they go? Back to their block. So we're trying to help correctional officers tutor the students. Anyway, we are focusing all over the spectrum of disability. We are looking at, I think it's later in the slideshow, the different disabilities that are prevalent in the system. All of those. So it's a very wide-ranging project, and it's a 2-year grant that we have. And like I said, we identified 2 to 4 states in each region of the ADA network, which includes West Virginia, by the way. And we're making those site visits and going out there and working with them on this training manual, and then going from there. So if you have any more questions about that, you can let me know. All right, John.
Thank you, Ben. So what is a disability? Oftentimes I'm asked by administrators, well, show me where in the law that is a disability. And I have to explain the law doesn't list disabilities. What it says is it's a physical or mental impairment that significantly impacts one or more activities of daily living. An activity of daily living can be walking, talking, eating, breathing, but it also includes thinking and concentrating. Those are 2 things that our college students are doing all the time. They have to think and they have to concentrate. So that is where a person's impairment may rise to the level of a disability. The accommodations are modifications or changes to practices, policies, or procedures in order to allow full access for that individual to the program, services, or activity. Some of the disabilities are vision, low vision, or blind. There's a legal blind definition, which is 2200 best corrected. Hearing, which can span a range of hard of hearing, may rely on lip reading, may need a hearing aid, which is almost next to impossible to get. Or if you do get a hearing aid in prison, you might not get your batteries that you need because, that's controlled by the CO. Physical conditions, chronic health, diabetes can rise to the level of a disability. Multiple sclerosis, especially in prison settings where there's no control over the temperature fluctuations, that can significantly impact a person with multiple sclerosis. Learning disabilities, such as dyslexia or dysgraphia, which is the, basically dyslexia is a reading disability, dysgraphia is the writing disability, and then there's dyscalculia, which is the math disability. There's also some other ones, but those are the 3 big ones that you might hear about. ADHD, which can be either hyperactive or inattentive. Speech disabilities. So I've worked with a couple of students who have stutters, and our program requires a speech class. So we've had to work on accommodations for speech classes or classes that have required speech giving. ID and DD is intellectual disability and developmental disabilities, and developmental disabilities include disabilities such as autism. Intellectual disability is considered basically a person who has a cognitive impairment. I did not write up in here because it's kind of hard, but traumatic brain injury can fit into several of those categories because it manifests in different ways for each person. Traumatic brain injury is a high incident disability in the correctional setting. And then I also always want to point out temporary conditions. So if your classes are 16 weeks and you have a student who breaks their arm and they're in a cast for 12 weeks out of your 16 weeks, that's going to significantly impact them if they have to write papers. So looking at what are some adjustments that might be made on a temporary basis for that individual. The law says the accommodations are for a permanent condition, but we do as an institution have to look at what are we doing for our students with temporary conditions. This is the chart, and we're just going to leave this. It's in the PowerPoint slide. I want you all to take a look at it. It's the disability prevalence from the Bixby study, which is the 66%. So you can see where those disability numbers are actually falling out in this study. And psychiatric is a very large percentage, 40%. And then they have cognitive and attention deficit disorder at about 28%. And so if we think about disability, we often think the person in a wheelchair. But if we actually look at the numbers, it's going to be somebody with a non-visible disability. We're not going to see it most of the time. We're not going to see it when they walk into the room. But those numbers are high in our classrooms.
I should point out with us that ADHD and autism are on the rise in the prison system. You can see that reflected in that chart that we just showed. And again, undiagnosed disabilities are very prevalent. Like I mentioned with the glasses example, there are a lot of people out there that think they don't like to read, but that's because they have struggled on how to read. So they have gone a long time without being diagnosed and without the proper, evaluations and all that stuff. They will just continue to think they just don't like to read. But some people just don't think or realize that it's because they have a barrier that could be accommodated for it. So think about that as well.
Ben, did you want to talk about who to include?
What do you mean?
Connecting with financial aid and admissions?
Or do you mean like which department to include? Anybody and everybody. I think that's the easy answer. Being a college student myself and going through all of this makes me a lot more aware. I was actually just at the National Association for Student Financial Aid Administrative convening in Washington, D.C. that Sheila had put together and her whole team, and it was awesome. And I realized at that convening more than I had ever realized, and this was recent, so how I had gone this long without thinking about it, I don't know. But think about the FAFSA form, for instance. How accessible is the FAFSA form without, just a regular form? I mean, do they understand what it means? Do they have, an AR-style version of a FAFSA form? So on, so on, so on. But what we have to do at PEPs or HEPs is we have to print out the FAFSA form, take it into the facility, have our students fill it out, and oftentimes it's not the financial aid person that brings in that form. Registration and admissions office is just as important because they are the first people that see that student most of the time, and they are the ones that can refer you to the right department. A really good analogy is when you have a baby that's born and they are deaf. What services are they telling the parent to go for? If they tell the parent, you must learn sign language or you must learn how to talk, one or the other, the parent will generally go in that direction. It's the same with students. If you don't tell them about disability services or turn them off for whatever reason, So that's why it's really important to include them as well. And then you have textbooks. Are they accessible? Can the student read them? If a student needs the PDF version of a text for audio purposes or whatever it might be, there are so many other offices that can be and should be involved. And disability services is probably the biggest one, obviously for this presentation. Unfortunately, it's very common for us to hear that disability services is not involved at all. And I'm not gonna, point anybody out, but there was one program that said, "Oh, I haven't talked to disability services in years." And I'm thinking, huh? What? So how are you meeting accommodation? And they say, well, they told us 2 years ago what to do, so we take it on ourselves. But that's a full-time job right there, and Dr. Montag can speak to that. The burden of having on-campus students and prison students and whatnot. So it's really important to include them as well. And I strongly believe that the DOC needs to be more involved in the whole conversation with ACPs and PEPs, especially when it comes to accommodation. And I'm not talking about I'm not just talking about administrators. I'm talking about correctional officers and the social workers or case managers or whatever you call them at your facility. They are just as important on the educational journey as a professor is. It's really important to collaborate, work together, and with that, we will be a lot more successful in ensuring that our students are, reintegrating back into society successfully.
So we did have these questions for you to also think about, but we're running out of time. So just think about what disabilities have shown up in your classroom. What has a student asked for? How have you been able to connect the students to disability accommodations? And are any of your faculty with disabilities teaching inside? Because oftentimes in higher education, we are focused on the students, but we also have faculty with disabilities. And that can be a difficult situation if the prison will not allow a certain type of disability in past the visitation room. And at my college's programs, that actually occurred to 2 faculty who were going to go in, but they couldn't get approved because they had a disability that the prison felt was a safety or security risk for them as
Can you give an
individuals.
example?
Hearing loss. So if a person basically is deaf or has a profound hearing loss, that could be a safety risk according to the prison administration. Another one is a person who needed to use a wheelchair to get into the prison because that wheelchair could then become either a conveyance of contraband or it could become a weapon. And so looking at one of our faculty just said, okay, then I won't be teaching inside. The other faculty said, well, can I get into the visitation room? And is there a time that we could hold classes in the visitation room? And that actually worked out for that semester because I was the only teacher who taught that class. So that's how they figured it out. So that collaboration is really important. I just wanted to make sure that since you're all not disability specialists, that you have some idea when the student's asking for something or disability services is talking about a type of accommodation, what does that look like? So on the screen, you'll see the hand signs, ASL. Below that, on the left-hand corner, is a refreshable braille display that's electronic. It connects to the computer, and then it will pop up the braille. But you can also, the person can also type braille into the computer and store notes or any information, write their paper that way. In the middle is a picture of a young child who has closed captioning above it, so it's from a video. And you'll see the brackets. The brackets means it's actually closed captioned and not just subtitled. Subtitles don't include any external sounds. It just is conveying the spoken words. Captioning includes other sounds. So it will clue in students that if the teacher asks a question and there's that pregnant pause waiting for an answer, the real-time captionist will actually caption that as waiting for answer so that the students know to respond. To the top right is paper braille being read by a person using their fingertips. Just so you guys know, one print page of type, 12-point font, can equal 3 to 4 pages of Braille paper. And so if you are at a prison where your student needs Braille, but the prison's shut down bringing in any paper, then what are the ways that you can accommodate a student who needs Braille access? And then below that, the case contains an FM system, which is an assistive listening device based on radio waves. And it contains a transmitter and a receiver and a microphone that the teacher wears and an earbud that the student wears that will allow them to amplify the teacher's sound and hear the teacher lecturing. You would think this would not be approved for entry, but I finally, after 6 months, was able to get our prison to approve that for a student who was basically deaf, who needed that in order to participate in our classes. Technology is a great tool on campus, not so much an option off campus in the prison setting. But there's Natural Reader, which is a speech to text, will read speech out loud. Read Aloud, Read Speaker is another one, and I've heard from Read Speaker that they're working in some prison settings already, so that they're able to get access to audio versions of print materials. Read and Write, NVDA, non-visual desktop access, and JAWS are two screen reading tools that people who are blind will use. JAWS requires internet access to confirm the license every time it's opened up to be used. NVDA, if you can get that flash drive approved and loaded onto a computer, if you have a computer lab for your students, does not require that internet access. So there's your access to a screen reader for students who are blind or have low vision. And then on the right-hand side, just some low tech, it's actually high tech, but low cost because it's built into Microsoft Office. So if you're a Microsoft Office campus and you have a computer lab on your prison setting, check to see that the accessibility features can be turned on for the students so that they can select magnifier to zoom up the text that they're trying to read on their screen. And then this final one on the left is the C-Pen. It actually is approved in Ohio by the Department of Corrections. They actually ordered several for each of the institutions. It scans the text. So the text has to be printed like 12-point font, and it'll read it out loud. In Ohio, it can only be used in the classroom, so the students cannot take it back and catch up on their reading. What I did was we were approved to bring it in for our students in our classes, but I had to work with our administrators to modify the policy that students can only come to 2 hours of study time because students who need the C-Pen have that additional need in order to access their textbooks. So we got them up to 6 hours of study time approved that they could be passed for on our campus. And then on the right-hand side is a portable CCTV. I had a student who had very low vision, couldn't see what was on the worksheet, couldn't see anything on the board. This tool actually will flip up the video, take anything that's on the board and zoom it up onto the screen. You can manipulate the colors, so it can be black on white, white on black, blue and yellow, if glare is a problem. I actually got this approved at one of the sites because I knew that the director of the education program had family experience with a family member with vision loss. And I said, hey, let me show you this tool that might be helpful for your family member, but I would like you to look at it for us to use in our classes because we have a student with low vision. He loved it. He thought it was phenomenal. It's $3,500, just in case anyone wants to know. But it is a tool that really makes a difference for our students. As long as the FM system and the magnifier device were under the control of the faculty, our students were able to use it. So we had a sign in, sign out process. The faculty, I trained all of them on how to check it in, check it out, and who was approved to use it. So you may have to come up with additional steps or processes, but it can be done. And so we talked a little bit about things that have been done. Real-time captioning is a court stenographer who's working remotely. If you have internet access and you can access Teams or Zoom so that the captionist can hear the audio of the class, they can type out everything that's being said, and then you can display it on the overhead. So you just connect them to that Team or Zoom's meeting, And then the students who have hearing loss but don't use American Sign Language interpreters can still access the class materials. And we talked a little bit about Braille, audio format of textbooks. Also consider when whoever's ordering the books, for Pell, it can only cover what is the official textbook on record. So you might want to talk to your book ordering folks that the record also includes the print copy if they're only ordering the electronic copy, because a student may actually need the print copy for their disability, and they're not able to purchase it using their Pell Grant if it's not available on the official record. So how do we get started? In 2 minutes. Connect with your College Disability Services office. Your institution may decide that College Disability Services is going to be involved, or they may say, that's too much to ask of Disability Services at a staffing level that we have right now. Can we train the HEP staff to go in as proxies and do that work for the Disability Services office? But that training has to be very detailed, and the laws are constantly changing. So it may be that the HEP staff needs to be part of the Disability Services staff meetings every week in order to stay on top of all the changes that are occurring. There has to be an interactive process with the students. We have to, as colleges, we have to engage with the student on what is their disability, how does it impact them, what accommodations are they needing. Working as an institution on what is the documentation that's required, that varies from college to college. Each college sets their documentation requirements. Community colleges, we're open enrollment. We tend to be a little more flexible on, hey, you have that IEP, or you can get that IEP, then we'll take that. Schools that are highly selective, like the Big Ten schools, they may require that it's current within 3 years, it's full psychoeducational evaluation, that it's adult normed. There's a whole bunch of requirements. So getting to know what your institution requires for documentation is critical. How do students even know that they can request accommodations? On the campuses, we just have our website and students know to go look at our website. But in the correctional setting, you don't have those websites. And so how do you notify students that disability accommodations are available and what the process is to request those? I put flyers up. Then I found out a school was actually doing an application. So I copied them. I said, hey, do you mind if I copy your process? And they said, oh, of course not. Go ahead. And so I actually created one and worked with our team out at the prisons, because they do a new student orientation. Every student has to go through it. That goes into the folder. Every student fills that out. The team out at the prison gives me those documents, and then I meet with the students that I need to meet with. As long as you're notifying them about the accommodations, you also need to notify them what is the grievance process if they have a complaint about the accommodations. It's not a one and done. We have to continue throughout the semester to ensure that students are getting the effective accommodations. And so they have to let us know if something's not working. And how can they do that? When I'm off campus, I'm over at the campus and not on the prison site, what's the process that they can notify me that I need to check it for another accommodation possibly? And then really from Disability Services, the best help is the PAP, HEP staff helping me connect with the right people at the prison, who in the administration I need to approve that accommodation. I finally found it was the director of technology at the one prison that could approve the FM system. And so I had to contact him and say, hey, can I demonstrate this for you so we can determine if I can bring this in? Once I got that connection after 6 months, it happened like that, and we got the student their accommodation. But having that connection and making those connections between Disability Services and the people they need to work with in the administration for those approvals is critical. There's some challenges. We've just really basically talked on those challenges. Ben, we're just going to jump over that one. These are the things that you want to think about in your program. What are you doing? How are you doing it? Where is it located? And then we've included some resources. I included the Jan list of VR offices because as we know, the goal is to get employment afterwards. If a person has a disability and wants employment, every state has a VR office that will help people with disabilities get and maintain employment. So once they're outside of the prison, This is where you need to direct people with disabilities to connect with to help them in getting employment outside. And then our references of the materials and questions from you. I'm sorry that we are probably 1 minute over right now. And that was pretty fast. I apologize.
That's all right. And, this is wonderful and, information, and it's something that is, again, it's not spoken about enough. And so that's why I think it's important that we provided this time frame for that. And with that, I also want to let you guys know that this PowerPoint presentation will be shared, correct? If I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
It will be shared, and also this is being video, so it will be posted on our YouTube channel, so you can always refer back to the topics of discussion. I want to just point out real quick, if you have questions that are unable to answer because of the time frame, you can reach out to them, and maybe we can post their emails on the chat so that they can have access to sending those questions directly to you guys. I want to thank everybody that's shown up today. One last thing that I want to bring out there for Unlock Higher Education is that, and I know this is quick, but I just want to let you guys know that our collaborative is growing. We are open for those to be involved and want to be involved, to sign up for it. We have close to 80 people that have already signed up. And again, this is the work that we want to do. This is the work that we want to do at the state level. This is one point of it, but this is a very important point of it. There's other, asks and work that we want to push forward. But overall is a basis of all the great work that's been done with access to education. We don't want to lose. And so we're putting boots on the ground, as they call it, to ensure that each of our states has not only the resources to support the training, but also the connections and network and access to that, so that we can continue on with this work of unlocking higher education to individuals inside and in their reentry journey. And with that, I thank you guys for joining us. Thank you guys for being 4 minutes past the hour. I appreciate
Thank you for sticking with us.
And so, thank you guys.
The work you do. It's monumentally important as we move forward with accessibility, that we make whatever initiatives that we strive for across this nation also be accessible to those who are experiencing the seen and unseen disabilities.
Yes.
I think every movement should have an access of this. And we, as a smaller community within a large culture, can make sure that we're intentional to create space for disability access as we move into these initiatives. So thank you for sharing your wealth of knowledge with us.
Thank you.